Michael Grandage is adapting, it's a book-to-film project called My Policeman. It was mentioned this week that Lily James and Harry Styles are both going to be on board this project. It's going to be 3 characters. So yeah, the first thought that I once like reading into the project, I got a sense it's something like Far From Heaven, and sort of a call back to an era where you couldn't assert yourself, at least in terms of your sexuality, and sort of like a last breath portion where like we're looking back at a love story that really had a strong effect on the character set. So yeah, let's briefly touch upon this filmmaker, this project. Grandage, this is his sophomore feature. He did a film called Genius that was at the Berlin Film Festival in 2016. So yeah, let's look at the cosmetics of the film.
Yeah, I mean, this is it's a fascinating story with an interesting cast as well. So it takes place in the 90s, and a couple welcomes a friend back into their home. And then there's just like a reminisce about Patrick and Tom who had this relationship 40 years earlier when it was illegal. And so it's based on a book, and apparently the book is based on the true story of author Ian Forster, who had a similar relationship with a man that he kept in the closet. What this brought to mind for me was actually Ian Forster wrote a novella called Maurice, which is a very similar story. It's about 2 young men who are in love, but they can't. It sort of falls apart because of societal pressures, and that was made into a film by James Ivory. So it actually the premise reminds me of that, like that sort of relationship, that sort of, I guess, texture, the sort of narrative. Yeah, that's what it brought to mind for me.
You can't help but think of James Ivory, since he's sort of like adapted those type of works, and certainly like it's set in 1950s Brighton, and so you could sort of like see like 2 creative or different like splintered narratives and how they might be dressed, and I certainly have a thing for anything that's of a different era, the 40s, 50s. Lily James is coming off Rebecca, so that sort of like gives us a sense of what she can bring to the character. For Harry Styles, we don't know actually if he's going to be playing the object of desire or the person that's on the outskirts in a way. So this is set up for a 2021 summer shoot. So it's something that we could potentially see in 2022. Is there anything else that we could say about this project?
Well, I think Harry Styles is the wild card here. We know he had a small role in Dunkirk, and now, I mean, he's kind of busy signing up for films. Last week we talked about him joining Olivia Wilde's film, and now he has this. It'll be interesting to see what the results are of his foray into acting and taking supporting and leading roles. So I'm just curious to see what he brings, because it's really an unknown.
Yeah, that's a good point. And the filmmaker he's somebody who's more familiar with the stage. So I think perhaps a piece like this will work better in his favor than his directorial debut. I'm Eric Lavallée. I'm editor-in-chief and site owner for IONCINEMA.com. And this is
Kevin Jagernauth, contributing writer for the playlist.
And together we are IndieSponge.